Letter. George S. Patton Jr. to Devers, June 3, 1942. When you remember my one-time aversion to the medium tank, you may be surprised at my suggestions concerning them. But you and they have certainly made a convert of me. In June, Patton traveled to Fort Benning to observe a demonstration by the 2nd Armored Division. He then continued to Fort Knox and later to Washington for meetings. As he told a friend, "From the rumors I heard, it now seems that Eisenhower and Clark will have the big jobs." Both men were headed to England, apparently to help prepare for a future invasion of Europe. Patton then went back to Indio, California. Almost immediately after his return, Patton received an unexpected message on June 21st, directing him to report to Washington the next morning. He likely assumed he, too, was being assigned to England. He flew east and reported directly to General Marshall, the Army Chief of Staff. Marshall explained that the British position in Libya had worsened significantly. Rommel had launched his offensive in May, and by June his forces were driving the British toward Egypt. Prime Minister Churchill was meeting with President Roosevelt in Washington when word arrived that Tobruk, a long-standing symbol of British endurance in North Africa, had fallen. Marshall proposed sending an armored division to support the British in the Middle East, and Patton was to command it. After outlining the situation, Marshall sent Patton to the Army War College to develop the deployment plan. After several days of study, Patton concluded and recommended to Marshall that 2 divisions would be better suited to the mission. By then, some of Marshall's advisors believed American forces would not be ready for combat until October or November. That timetable would be too late to help the British during their immediate crisis. They instead recommended sending 300 tanks and 100 howitzers to the Middle East. Marshall accepted the proposal, and Churchill agreed. Patton returned once again to Indio. Not knowing why the mission had vanished so abruptly, he assumed that his recommendation for additional troops had displeased Marshall. Rather than simply carrying out Marshall's instructions, Patton had suggested a different approach. He worried that this had created a poor impression in Washington, especially with Marshall. He was also disappointed that the opportunity for combat had disappeared. As he wrote to Krittenberger, "I certainly regret that we failed to get to Africa, as I am sure we would have given a splendid account of ourselves prior to our untimely demise." The concern that he might have failed Marshall at a critical moment continued to trouble him, and he shared his anxiety with his friend Floyd Parks at Army Ground Forces. When Parks assured him that he had not damaged his standing, Patton replied, "I was very glad to get your letter and find that I had not completely destroyed my opportunities. If the question ever comes up, you can tell all and sundry that I am willing to take anything to any place at any time, regardless of consequences." Patton drew an important lesson from the experience, and in the years ahead, he would follow closely the missions and responsibilities assigned by his superiors. He invited Colonel E.W. Pyburn, recently returned from the Middle East, to address the entire command. Patton later praised the talk, noting that Pyburn was an excellent talker and a natural killer. On July 11th, Devers gave Patton exciting news in a casual and indirect way. Events were unfolding quickly, Devers said, and the War Department was considering sending an armored corps overseas in September or October. The main question was when another headquarters should be sent to the desert to take over Patton's position. GSP Jr. to Devers, July 14, 1942. Until getting your letter, I had heard nothing of an armored corps going overseas. I appreciate your selecting me. I won't let you down. 1 week later, Eisenhower wrote from London to say that he might soon have urgent need of Patton. When that time came, Eisenhower would have to overcome his reluctance to ask for the services of someone he viewed as more senior and more capable than himself. Eisenhower had often remarked that Patton embodied his ideal battlefield commander. If battles were won by moving large formations, he believed Patton should be placed wherever the fighting was most intense. He closed by thanking Patton for his congratulations on his promotion, especially because, as he wrote, "Because you and I both know that you should have been wearing additional stars long ago," devotedly. With Mark Clark in London, Floyd Parks assumed the role of chief assistant to McNair at Army Ground Forces. Parks often acted informally as a channel through which Patton could pass information and receive updates. Patton shared his views in hopes that Parks would relay them to McNair when appropriate, and Parks occasionally gave Patton insight into the mood in Washington. In July, Patton sent Parks a message that was less a formal request than a statement of hope. "There is an old saying," he wrote, "that he who tooteth not his own horn, verily the same shall not be tooted." Colonel E.W. Pyburn, who had spent over a year in the Middle East, believed that desert terrain was harsher than anything in Libya or Mesopotamia, and that American troops at the Desert Training Center were more competent to go into battle today than any unit he had served with, including the famed British 7th Armored Division. He added that the junior officers in this command possessed a stronger sense of responsibility for upcoming combat than any officers, foreign or American, whom he had encountered. Naturally, such remarks are most pleasant to me, and knowing your interest in me and the center, I am taking the liberty of forwarding them to you. I am having my first night combat operation. I am looking forward to it with great interest and some trepidation, but I believe that the danger inherent in such operations is justified by the good that can come from their successful accomplishment. On July 27th, Devers reassured Patton and praised the outstanding work he was doing. He was pleased that Patton emphasized the essentials of warfare such as radio communications, marksmanship, air support, and mobility. Letter, GSP Jr. to Devers, July 27, 1942. This morning I went out and watched the board work with the T-6 battlefield recovery vehicle. This machine pulled a medium tank through sand, much worse than we would ever attempt to fight on, thereby demonstrating to my belief that it is the answer for battlefield recovery. 2 days later, Floyd Parks sent Patton more welcome news. After creating a schedule for transporting certain armored divisions overseas, McNair had chosen Patton and his headquarters to command the units listed at the top of the roster. Patton had impressed both McNair and Marshall, and Parks was confident Patton would lead the first contingent of combat troops to depart the United States. The next day, July 30th, Patton sent a messenger from his headquarters to deliver a note to his wife Beatrice, who was staying in Indio. "Darling B, I have just been ordered to leave for Washington today. It's preparatory to going overseas on an inspection trip. I will probably be gone 2 or 3 weeks, but will return here before going to war. I love you." He would not return, and several weeks later he asked Gillen, who had taken over command of the Desert Training Center, to publish the following message: "Soldiers, owing to circumstances beyond my control, I left you so hastily that I was unable to speak to you personally. However, I would be lacking in gratitude if, even at this late date, I failed to tell you of my sincere appreciation of the magnificent conduct of each and every one of you whom I had the honor to command. Having shared your labors, I know the extreme difficulties under which we worked, and I know also how splendidly and self-sacrificingly you did your full duty. I thank you and congratulate you. It was an unparalleled honor to have commanded such men." Before departing Indio, he also sent McNair and Devers a paper summarizing his experience. In that mimeographed brochure, he recorded his observations about the training he had conducted, the performance of officers and enlisted men, and the adequacy of weapons and equipment.